This is like the lecture for chapter 13, or the cost of production. The purpose of this chapter is basically learn or start examining firms' behavior, and why are we studying this chapter so early? Like I stated for the previous chapter, chapter 21 in consumer theory, and that's the foundation behind the demand curve. This chapter is the foundation behind chapter 14, the next chapter we're going to study about firms in perfectly competitive environments. And that chapter is the foundation behind the supply curve. So in order for us to study chapter 14, we need to study chapter 13. All right, so what is the learning objective for this chapter? It's the following. What we will do is learn about what is behind the firm's cost structure, and in general, people's cost structures. When we are making decisions, whether it's a firm or a person, what we're going to do is learn about what are the costs involved. Then we are going to learn about something called a production function. At our level, at the beginning principles level, it basically a black box. You put in a bunch of factors of production, technology, some land. Factors of productions are land, labor, machines, capital. Put them in a black box, add some raw materials, and out comes some finished products like white t-shirts. Okay, that's pretty much to the extent what we're going to do is learn about. And then we're going to learn about the link between production function and total costs, how they are related. After that, what we're going to do is learn a bunch of definitions about cost. Total cost, average total cost, marginal cost, variable cost, whatever. I'm going to teach you a bunch of definitions. And then from there, we are going to draw a typical cost curves, typical cost curves in the short run for a typical firm. I'm going to show you how average total cost is related to marginal cost, and I'm going to also show you why the average total cost curve is U-shaped. And then lastly, I'm going to introduce you to something called the long run average total cost curve and tell you why it kind of looks like the way it does. Okay. All right. Before we start and talk about all this gobbledygook, let's talk about something. What is the firm's goal? What is the goal for a firm? It isn't to save lives or cure cancer unless it can make butt tons of money doing it. The firm's goal is to solve this problem, maximize pi is profit. Okay. The goal for a firm is to make a butt ton of money, as much money as possible. Okay, maximize profit. Well, profit, that is equal to total revenue, how much money they could bring in, minus total cost. How much does it cost to bring in this amount of money? Total revenue minus total cost is the money that the firm gets to keep, the take-home money. Okay? In our simple, stupid world, what we are going to do is say they try to maximize profit by picking Q, or output levels, how much to produce. They try to tweak how much to produce to make the most money possible, or to maximize profit. That's pretty much our firm's goal. I think in chapter 15, when we get to it, and other chapters, we might talk about how they can manipulate prices. But for now, we're just going to say we're sticking to the fact that they can only manipulate quantities. Okay. Given this, what is total revenue and total cost equal to? Total revenue, and again, I'm going to shorthand this and just put TR because I'm lazy. That is equal to price times quantity. Okay. This right here is the unit price. How much each output, each slice of pizza, each orange costs. And this is how many do they sell? So this is quantities out, total output, right? So unit price. Okay. So to get total, if we know that Domino's sells a slice of pizza at $5 each, and today they sold 100 slices of pizza, 5 times 100 is $500 is their total revenue. Okay, that's total revenue. All right, total cost. Total cost. What is total cost? For economists, total cost is the fully loaded cost of or the market, I should just copy this next time. Market value of inputs. Okay. So, used in production. Let me finish the sentence. Okay. It's basically the fully loaded cost to produce the stuff that they sold. Again, in my example, Domino's sells 100 slices of pizza. It's the fully loaded cost of making and selling the 100 slices of pizza. One way of looking at it is the market value of these inputs, okay, used to produce the 100 slices of pizza. All right, get to here. The next thing I want to say is for economists, total cost, TC is total cost. This will equal to what we call explicit costs plus implicit costs. Okay. For economists, we believe the total cost comprised of both explicit costs and implicit costs. What is explicit cost? Well, let me copy this in. Explicit costs are input costs that require spending of money. These are any costs you could think of that we have to write a check or pay with credit card or with hard-earned cash. That's explicit costs. When you go to Home Depot and buy some wood, explicit costs. When you go Staples to buy some pens and paper, explicit costs. You got to pay someone to clean the bathroom, explicit costs. Okay, that makes sense. What are implicit costs? Implicit costs are costs that do not require the firm to actually spend money. Usually we consider things like opportunity. Main one is opportunity cost. This is the main implicit cost. Okay. Basically the net benefit of an alternative use of the input. Okay. What do I mean by that? Okay, let me explain this to you with 3 types of capital. As I stated earlier, there's 3 types of capital, And let me just erase some of this. So, okay. In economics, we consider we could classify capital into three buckets: physical capital, human capital, and financial capital. What is physical capital? Any physical capital is like machines we use, computers, stuff we use to help us produce widgets or pizza ovens, okay, printers and stuff like that. Human capital, that's basically knowledge. Financial capital is basically money. Okay. So, so what is an opportunity cost with physical capital? Well, let's think about this. Let's say I spent $50,000 to buy a pickup truck. I use that to deliver cookies for my cookie factory. I own a cookie factory. I make and sell cookies. Okay. And I decided, hey, I'm going to just buy a pickup truck for $50,000. And I'm going to use that to deliver cookies. Okay. Well, what is an opportunity cost or an implicit cost of using this pickup truck to deliver cookies? It's something that you could have done with this that could have made you some money. Well, what is it? Well, you could have rented the truck out to somebody else, like U-Haul. U-Haul rents out trucks. And what you could have done is put a sign there and said, hey, rent my truck for $50 an hour or $50 a day or whatever. You basically gave up that $50 an hour or $50 a day to use this truck in your own business. Okay. An economist says you need to consider that when you decide to use the truck for your own business. You should consider alternative uses for that truck. Or a lawnmower. I could buy a lawnmower, use it to make money, or rent it to somebody else and allow them to mow lawns and make money and pay me rent. Okay, that's opportunity cost of physical capital. Okay. Okay, so what about human capital? I think I've talked about this one a couple times. Okay. All right. I believe this one's also in my notes. You graduate from college, go to the next, part of life, and you're going to 4-year university, and you decide, you know what, I want to go to law school or med school. You apply for both, you got into both, and and you're trying to make a decision: should I go to med school? Should I go to law school? The opportunity cost of going to law school is all the cool things you will never experience as a doctor. And the opportunity cost of going to med school is all the cool things you will never experience as being a lawyer. So ultimately, if you choose to become a doctor, all that cool stuff that's associated, that only lawyers get to experience, you will never experience. That's the opportunity cost of human capital. Okay. All right, let's talk about the next one: financial capital. Okay, what's an opportunity cost of financial capital? Let's give a simple and stupid example. Let's suppose you have $100 in Google, and your friend says, hey, man, invest in Facebook. You're going to make more money. Okay. Um, you switch out, you sell Google, you put your money, your $100 in Facebook. At the end of the year, you made 10%. Yeah, it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool until you look back and you're like, huh, how much would I have made if I left it in Google instead of Facebook? If it was 9% or less than 10, you'd be like, yeah, I'm happy. If it was like 12, 13, or 30%, you'd be pretty sad. Okay. Why? Because the cost of investing in Facebook was the next best, or was the benefit associated with the next best alternative, which was leave it in Google in this situation. Okay. So yes, economists say we need to consider both explicit costs, money we spend to make, say, cookies in our cookie factory, as well as implicit costs. Okay. All right, let's move on. So I'm going to erase this. Some of this. So for an economist, okay, let's say total cost economist, economist, this is equal to cost explicit plus cost implicit. But for accountants, they usually only consider explicit costs. There's a couple of examples like amortization and depreciation where they actually do consider implicit costs, but for the most part, they only consider explicit costs. So what we could see here is the following. Profit for economists is not necessarily equal to profit for accountants. They could be only if implicit costs are zero. Okay, why? Profit or economist is equal to total revenue. Okay, and let me do it very simple. Price times quantity. Okay, that's from here. Minus explicit cost plus implicit cost. Profit for accountant is equal to price times quantity or total revenue minus explicit costs. Okay. So here we see the difference is that economists consider implicit cost. Usually cost for profit for economists is less than or equal to profit for accountants. Only way they are equal if cost for implicit is equal to zero, or there's no implicit cost. That's the only time. Usually, so if implicit cost is greater than zero, and that's usually the case, then, oops, I did it wrong. Economist profit is always less than accountant's profit. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is learn in the next lecture something called zero economic profit condition. Okay. And that's a very important topic for economists that many other people cannot understand. Even some economists have a hard time understanding this. Okay. And what does that mean? What economists say that is in equilibrium in a very competitive environment, economic profit will equal to zero. Okay. Wait a minute. If profit's equal to zero, why would a company want to stay in business? That don't make sense. Well, remember, in a situation like this, profit for economic profit is equal to zero. Accounting profit is still greater than zero, right? So even though economic profit is equal to zero, accounting profit is still positive, and they will still make money. Okay. Now, okay, why I don't get it, or maybe some of you guys are saying that this is a very difficult topic. So in order to explain this difficult topic, let me clear this a little bit. We're going to talk about the concept of a secret corner for gas stations. Okay, we all know that gas stations are always on corners of a street. So typically, you have a street like this, And there's a gas station here, gas station here, gas station here, gas station here, another street, another gas station, another gas station, another gas station, another gas station, another street here, so on and so forth. Okay. Now let's suppose we have a situation where there's this gas station and he occupies this corner, and there's no other gas stations for several miles, just him or her. Then they have like a secret little monopoly to themselves where everybody that lives in this area, that lives in this area here, they're going home from work, they're kind of tired, and they see this gas station, they need gas, and they're like, yeah, he charges a little bit more. But you know what? I'm not gonna drive out of my way to save like $2 or $3. I just want to fill up here and go home. Okay. That's what a lot of people would do. They don't want to deal with it. They just don't want to deal with it. All right. So this gas station here makes a lot of money. Other gas station around Southern California, let's say they're making $100,000 a year. You own a gas station, there's a lot of competition around you that sells gas. So let's say most people make about $100,000 a year from owning a gas station. This one here, because he owns this secret corner, let's say he makes like 200,000 a year or 300,000 a year. He makes more money. All right. All right, so is this sustainable? Is it sustainable for this gas station to continue to make this much money? The answer is no. Somehow people will find out. All right, how? I don't know. Let's say there's like a gas station convention. Everybody goes to some, I don't know, Disney hotel or something. Everybody's there, celebrating that they're gas station owners. Everybody's driving up in their Honda Accords, and maybe some of them have Lexuses and BMWs and whatnot. And the guy who owns this gas station, he drives up in his Lamborghini. Everybody's like, what? That guy doesn't own like 10 gas stations. He only owns one. How does he afford that? Well, we're driving our Camrys and our Accords and our Lexuses. How does he afford that? So what they do is they follow him back to his gas station. And then they realize in this whole several mile area, this guy is the one gas station and he's charging, I don't know, $7.99 per gallon. Okay. While everybody else in Southern California is charging $5 a gallon, whatever. Okay. What would happen is one of these people who finds out, they will open up a gas station right next to him and he'll charge $7.98.9. And then what would happen after that? Another gas station would open up right here. He charges $7.98.8. And then a gas station opens up here, $7.98.7. And then a gas station here, another street up here, so on and so forth. What will happen is a price war. And eventually this guy has to lower his price. So these guys, they will all have to lower their price because they will start undercutting each other. Until when? Until everybody in this area makes about $100,000 a year. Okay. So in my simple and stupid example, the accounting profit is $100,000 a year. Okay. And the economic profit is zero. How? Because profit accounting, which is equal to price times quantity minus cost, explicit cost, I said this is $100,000 a year. Okay. Profit for economic profit is equal to what? Accounting profit, this whole gobbledygook, minus implicit cost. Well, we know this is 100,000. This implicit cost is the cost of the alternative. Well, what is the alternative here? Opening a gas station somewhere else. And we know that is a profit of 100,000. So that's why economic profit is 0. Yeah. All right, we'll move on. That's something we'll learn more in the next chapter. Just kind of want to introduce it to you guys to somehow, hopefully we can embed this into your head. All right, let me clear this. And now we're going to do is learn about production functions. Okay. So production and cost. Like I said before, production function is Q equals some function of A, L, K, ... where this is output, quantity, how much output we have. And that's a function of technology. A is, I think it's advancements. We use that for technology and economics. L is labor. And K is capital. Again, there's several different types. Knowledge is human capital, physical capital, and so on and so forth. You put all this stuff in this function. You put 10 people with some machine, some knowledge, some sugar, some flour, technology of 2022. You put that all into this production function, out comes like 100 cookies. Okay, that's what a production function is. Okay. Production function provides a relationship between the quantity of inputs used to make a good and the quantity of outputs of that good. Again, that black box. A black box you stick in like technology, labor, capital, land, raw materials, etc., etc., and out comes some output. Okay. All right, so let's go here. There's the two classic shapes of a production function. Okay. I think I screwed up the notes. I gotta rewrite the notes. Okay. Yeah, I screwed up the notes. I'm gonna change the notes later. Okay. There's two classic shapes of a production function. Let me clear this. One's a S-shaped production function, and the other one is concave shape. But I actually drew both as S-shaped in the notes. Okay, two classic shapes. There's the S-shaped production function. This production function is more generalized, and we're not going to really talk about this one too much in the notes, I think, but let's this is the more generalized one. Okay. This one, there's labor, okay, and there's output. I'm going to draw this production function because we are living in this two-dimensional world. It's only going to show you the relationship between how much people we're going to hire and output. Okay. This is holding all other inputs held fixed in stone. This is the more generalized production function. It's called the S-shaped, and it looks like this. Okay. Looks kind of like that. And what happens is in the beginning, when you hire one person, output goes up by this much. Hire the second person, output goes up. And then after a while, when you hire the third, let's say we hire the fourth person, the increase in output is massive. That first person the increase was small, but hiring going from 3 to 4, the increase was massive. Okay, and that's because this right here, when you had the first 3 people, we had startup issues. Okay, and then we got over that startup issue problem. And then after a while, when you start hiring people, the increase in output shrinks back again. And this happens because of something called the diminishing marginal product of an input, in this case, labor. Okay. All right. Now let's go to the concave shape. Okay. And again, I need to change out the notes. I will change out the notes. All right. So the concave shape, what does that look like? Basically, it's missing the concave shape production function is missing the startup difficulties or the startup issue. Okay. And it looks like this. Function. Oops. Labor. And here's quantity of outputs. And it looks more like this. Oops. Looks just, it's just from this S part, it's just this part right here. That's all it is. All right. Now I'm going to use this production function to talk about a couple of concepts. I'm going to introduce to you right now definitions called total output, or total product, marginal product, and something I just talked about, diminishing marginal product of an input, in this case, labor. Let me explain that to you. Okay, here, when you don't have any workers, you're not producing any cookies. We'll just say these are cookies. When you hire your first guy, you get a lot of cookies out of him. Okay, you go from 0 to up here, I don't know, let's say that's 10. You get 10 cookies. The first guy also added 10. Okay, the first guy has a total output of 10 cookies and a marginal output going from 0 to 1 employee is plus 10. Okay, now let's hire the second guy. When you hire the second guy, well, having 2 people allows you to produce more than 10 cookies. We see that. But it's like, I don't know, like 17 cookies. Hiring the first guy gave you plus 10, this much output. The second guy didn't give you as much cookies. And we'll say it's like plus 7. So having 2 people gives you a total output or total product of labor, in this case, of 17. The marginal production of the second guy is plus 7, basically saying when you add the second guy, he only gave you 7 extra cookies. Okay. All right, and then we could do the same thing with the third guy. Okay. Okay. And we could see so 8. Let's say I don't know, the total product is 22, and you add plus 5 or something like that. Looks like it's lower than 7. Okay. You could see the marginal product, meaning when you're hiring an extra worker, they are adding less and less amount of cookies, meaning the marginal product of each worker falls. This isn't because the first worker you hired was Michael Jordan, second worker you hired was Scottie Pippen, and the third guy was Steve Kerr. No, it's not because of that. It's because we're holding all other factors held fixed at a specific number. So if we had, like, say, 2 blenders, well, the first guy and 1 cookie oven, the first guy you hire, he could use all the machines he wants. No problem. There's no one else in the kitchen. You hire the second guy, he could only use the cookie oven when the first guy's not using it. There's only 1 cookie oven, but both of them could use blenders. What about the third guy? When is he going to use a blender? Well, he has to wait for the first 2 guys to finish using the blender. And the cookie oven, geez, he has to wait when the first 2 guys are done. So we could see the productivity of the third, fourth, fifth guys fall because the number of machines is held fixed. The kitchen is, size is held fixed. As you put more and more people in the kitchen, they start, having to avoid each other. And you could see production function could actually fall like this, meaning as you hire more and more workers, output falls. And that's a situation where maybe it's so crowded in the kitchen, they start smashing cookies. They run into each other, drop cookies on the floor. Okay. All right. So now I put up and I talked about total product, marginal product, all these stuff. Let me put in the definitions. Let me clear this. Okay. Okay. Total product is the total output by the total amount of input measured on the x-axis. Meaning, what do I mean by that? It's a weird way of saying, if you hire 1 guy, what was the total product? I believe it was 10. 2 guys, 17. 3 guys was 22. That's the total output. Total product is total output. What is marginal product? That's an increase in output that arises from an additional unit of input while holding everything else constant or fixed in stone. When we hired the first guy, the marginal product of that first labor guy was plus 10. Second guy, plus 7. Because we went from 10 to 17, he added 7. The third guy, I believe, was plus 5. The last concept we learned about is the diminishing marginal product, and in our case, of labor, of an input or labor in this case. Marginal product of an input declines generally. Okay, sometimes it can be flat. As the quantity of input increases, this extra productivity of the input falls because all other inputs are fixed. With 1 broom, you have 3 employees, like 3 sweepers. Okay, that means the first guy could use the broom during the day shift. Second guy could use this broom as a night shift guy. Third guy uses the broom graveyard shift. Well, let's suppose, okay, so we saw in this simple example, no diminishing marginal product of labor for the first 3 guys. How about the fourth guy? When is he going to use the broom? Now you see a massive drop in the marginal product when we hire the fourth guy. Okay, so that's the production function. It's used to show you these ideas here, and we learned 3 new definitions. Now what we're going to do is move to the relationship between production function and cost curve. So let me show you the cost curve and tell you why it looks like the way it does. Okay, production function and total cost curve. All right, so the total cost curve is drawn in the following 2-dimensional space where we have output measured on the x-axis, unlike the production function that was measured on the y-axis. And here, the y-axis, or the dependent variable, is total cost, TC, okay? And this is output. And usually, the total cost function, I won't say usually. The total cost function, if we have a concave cost curve, the one that, sorry, hold on. So if we have an S-shaped production function, our total cost curve will look like this. It will look like that, okay? If we have, here's total cost, here's output, here's, hold on, this is, actually, it'll look like this. Specifically, it doesn't start from 0, it starts above 0. If we had a concave production function, then our total cost curve will look like this, okay? And again, it starts above 0. Why? This measures fixed cost. Right here, we account for fixed cost. Even though you're not producing anything, you don't have any labor, you can have costs. Like, for example, if you have a 5-year lease to, your cookie factory, you're leasing the land, you're going to have to still pay that rent, even though you're not producing anything. Those are examples of fixed costs. That's an example of a fixed cost. Okay, so right here. And then we could see the total cost curve. Okay, these two are related, and these two are related. Here, remember what I told you is you have startup costs in this beginning part right here. And as we increase output, our total cost increases significantly. And then it kind of flattens out. That's because we're starting to understand how to produce. It flattens out. And then again, it increases significantly. And that's because of this part right here, the diminishing marginal product of labor. Okay, I'll explain this part and this part here. Hopefully you guys understand while it's increasing significantly there. Again, it's because, again, when you hire one guy, you get like maybe 1 cookie out. 2 guys, you get 2 cookies out. 3 guys, you get like 3 cookies out. 4 guy, you get like a lot more than 1, right? You could see that the first couple of guys barely get any cookies out. And then when you start hiring like 4, 5, 6 guy, that's when the cookie production increases. So here, to get a certain amount of output, say 4 cookies, you need to get 4 people, at least 3 people hired. And that increased your cost significantly. Okay. To get an output of 4 cookies, we saw, let's say right here is 4, we need to hire 3 people. And it increased your cost significantly because you have to have 4 laborers. And then after a while, it starts flattening it out. Okay. And that's because of this part up here, which we'll explain down here. All right. So now let's explain why it's flat and it increases. And that's because in the beginning stages, without the startup costs, okay, or for us, this pace right here, with the startup cost. When you hire your first guy, we said he produced 10 cookies. You hired the second guy, I think we said we had a total of 17 cookies. Okay. So to get the first 10 cookies out, plus 10, you barely had any costs above fixed costs. You only had to hire one guy. Okay. But over here, to get the same 10 cookies, when you are producing a lot of cookies, you gotta hire 1, 2, 3. You gotta have to hire 3 people to get the same 10 cookies at the high end. Okay. So that's 10. And that's why your total cost increases significantly. If you're already producing cookies and you want to make 10 more cookies, you have to hire 3 people. And costs are massive. But if you're not producing cookies and you want to make 10 cookies, you only have to hire one guy. Okay? So you're not producing any, you want to make 10 cookies, you only have to hire one guy. And that's why total cost barely increases, just the labor of one guy. Okay? This is the relationship between the production function and the way it's shaped, like this, and the total cost curve, the way it's shaped, like this. Okay. Oops. And it's because right here we're experiencing diminishing marginal product of labor. We have the total cost curve increasing at an increasing rate. Okay. Again, this part right here is due to diminishing marginal product of labor. And this part right here is because of startup costs. Okay, I am done with the relationship between production function and the total cost curve. And now what we're going to do is talk about, I'm going to introduce to you a bunch of definitions. Okay, fixed cost, variable cost, blah, blah, blah. Let's talk about those things. All right. So definition, there we have something called fixed costs. Fixed costs are costs that do not vary with output. Fixed costs, okay, I'm going to shorthand it with FC. That is just costs that that you have to pay regardless of whether you make 1 cookie, 0 cookie, or a billion cookie. Classic example is the lease, the rent payment. An example for you guys is if you guys, sign up for a cell phone plan for 2 years, $20 a month, whether you make 1 cell phone call or 1,000 cell phone call, you still have to pay $20 a month. Okay. Variable cost, that is VC. Okay. Variable costs, I'm going to use shorthand VC. And then that's the costs that do vary with output. Example will be like labor, cost of sugar in making cookies. More cookies we need to make, we have to buy more sugar. Total cost, I'm going to use TC, and TC is equal to fixed cost plus variable cost. Total cost is just the total cost of producing stuff. All right. And after that, I'm going to introduce you to three other terms: average fixed cost, average variable cost, and average total cost. All right, what is average fixed cost? That's AFC, and that's just fixed cost divided by Q, or per unit fixed cost. Okay, so for example, let's say rent is equal to $100 a month. If I make one cookie, average fixed cost, and this would be actually fixed cost. Average fixed cost would be 100 divided by 1, or $100 per cookie. If I make two cookies, average fixed cost is equal to 100 divided by 2, or $50 per cookie that I made. Okay. Average variable cost is the same concept, AVC. This is the variable cost divided by output. Average total cost, this is ATC, and this is average fixed cost plus average variable cost. We could plug in what we know, fixed cost divided by Q plus variable cost divided by Q, okay? Or total cost divided by Q. They're all interchangeable. All right, so average fixed cost, that's the per unit, average total cost, I'm sorry, is the per unit total cost. Okay, so if I don't know, Toyota, that's not even how I spell Toyota, it cost them $1 million. And they spend $1 million to make Camrys, and the quantity of Camrys 1 million. That means average total cost is equal to $1, meaning each Camry cost them $1 to make. Okay. The last one we're going to talk about is marginal cost, or MC. That's the change in total cost from producing an extra unit. So the marginal cost is equal to change of total cost divided by change in quantity. So what happens to marginal cost if I want to eke out another cookie? What is the additional cost I would incur? That's marginal cost. Okay. The marginal cost, by the way, is the slope of total cost curve. Remember our total cost curve? It was Q and total cost, and it would look like this, the one without the startup cost. So here, the slope at any one point, the slope is equal to rise over run, and this is change in total cost divided by change in quantity, and this again is the marginal cost. Okay, so I introduced all this to you, and let me see. All right, I'm going to explain to you why the cost curves are why the average. You know what? Let's move on to draw the next topic, which is what do typical cost curves for a typical firm look like in the short run? All right, let's talk about that first. All right. So here we're going to draw in this two-dimensional space where we're measuring quantity on the x-axis. But instead of total cost, we're going to draw average total cost, average variable cost, average fixed cost. These are all measured in money, so I'm just going to put money on the y-axis. All right, so what do these firms look like? 2 U's and a J. Average total cost. Oh, average variable cost. And a J, marginal cost. Okay, so average total cost and average variable cost, they start far apart, the 2 U's, and they get closer together. Marginal cost is a J. And it goes through, I guess I should have drew this better. It should go through the bottom of each of the average cost curves. So that's the bottom, that's the bottom. It goes through the bottom of the average total cost curve and the bottom of the average variable cost curve. That's basically how you draw it. 2 U's and a J. Now, if you say, wait a minute, I see this picture on page 10 of our notes or 11, excuse me, there's a third curve, average fixed cost curve. How come I don't put it up here? I just didn't want to complicate the picture and put in a new curve, okay? Average fixed cost curve, I'm going to draw it in a different color. Say red, would look like this. Starts off really high and goes down. Remember what average fixed cost is. Average fixed cost is equal to fixed cost divided by quantity. Fixed cost is like your rent. Let's say your rent is equal to $2,000 a month. If Q equals 1, if Q equals 1, average fixed cost is 2,000. Quantity is equal to 2, average fixed cost is equal to 1,000. If quantity is equal to 10, average fixed cost is equal to 200. If quantity is equal to 20, average fixed cost is equal to 100. You could see as quantity goes up, average fixed cost falls. Okay, and that's why the average fixed cost looks like this. When Q is low, average fixed cost is high. When Q increases, average fixed cost falls. But you could find that information without drawing it out. How? By using the gap between average total cost and average variable cost. When Q is low, let's say Q is right here. Right here is average variable cost. Up here, right there is average total cost. If the difference between average total cost and average variable cost, this large person is average fixed cost. The vertical gap between average variable cost and average total cost is average fixed cost. And you could see average fixed cost is falling as Q increases. Okay. I myself don't like having a lot of to complicate the picture, and so I like drawing 3 curves. If you want to draw 4 curves for your analysis, go right ahead. Just for me, it's just easier for me. Okay. All right. In the notes, I gave you 2 different cost curves. One is a J, and one's just a curve that just kind of goes up like a slide. All right, let me explain that real quickly. Okay. The one I use is a J, and that's from and I'm just copying, I'm just using the book. The one I even though it wasn't very explained well in the book. The one I use is a J for the marginal cost. And that's from the idea that production function is S-shaped. Okay. The next one is when we have production function that's just concave, like this. Then the marginal cost curve is just increasing at a increasing rate like that. There's no downwards dip part right here. Okay. The marginal cost falls and then it increases because you're getting over the startup costs. Okay, that startup cost hump, you're dealing with that, and you're getting over it, so the marginal cost falls, and then it goes up. Okay, and basically it represents this part right here. Okay, again, our classic picture that we are basically going to use for most of our analysis is going to be, here's quantity, $, 2 U's and a J, average total cost. Oops. Average variable cost and a J for marginal cost. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is talk about why is the average total cost curve a U? So let's get into that now. Okay. Why is the average total cost curve U-shaped? Okay. And that's because of the interaction between the average variable cost and average fixed cost. Okay. For reference, I'm going to draw quantity, $, average total cost, average variable cost, marginal cost. Okay. In the beginning, meaning when quantity is super low, average fixed cost is super high. Okay. Average fixed cost is high. And that caused average total cost to be super high with low outputs. That's why average total cost starts really high. As quantity increases, average fixed cost declines. And that's causing the average total cost to decline as well. But because of diminishing marginal product of inputs, average variable cost starts creeping up. We see that here. It's declining and then it creeps up like this. And that causes average total cost to creep up as well. Okay, as Q increases, average variable cost increases, which causes average total cost to increase. That's why average total cost is U-shaped. The last thing I want to talk about here is right here, where marginal cost goes through the bottom of the average total cost here. Right here, we have the lowest average total cost or per unit cost. Okay, that when you're producing this much cookies, this many output, I'll put Q star, you have the lowest average total cost or per unit cost. That is called efficient scale of operations. That's called the efficient scale because you have the lowest use of resources. All right, let's move on and talk about the relationship between marginal cost and average total cost. This is kind of an important concept, the relationship between marginal cost and average total cost. Okay. When marginal cost is less than average total cost is falling. When marginal cost is greater than average total cost is going up. Okay, this is the basic concept, is the marginals drag the average. Okay, I'll explain this to you two different ways. One way with football that no one understands other than football players, and another way with GPA, which everybody understands. Okay. In football, you have let's say a quarterback and you have a running back. The running back, he has the average yards per carry. Let's say it's 5. That means he carried the ball, whatever, 500 times this year. And if he has a average yards per carry of 5, that means on average he got like 5 yards every time he carried or he got the football and ran with the football. Next time the quarterback gives him the ball, if he busts out and gets 100 yards, that's equivalent to marginal cost. That's his marginal carry, plus 100. What would that do to his average yards per carry? It increases. Okay, when the marginals is greater than the average, it increases the average. If the next time he got the ball, he got stuffed at the line of scrimmage, then he got 0. His marginal carry or marginal contribution was 0. His average was 5. It will lower his average. Marginals drag the average. Okay, now I'll explain it in a term that most other people will understand. GPA. Let's say you're a sophomore, you've taken, whatever, so many classes, and your current GPA is 3.5. The score you get in this class, that's your marginal contribution to that GPA. If you get an A in this class, what happens to your GPA? It goes up. If you get because 4.0 is greater than 3.5. If you get an F in this class, 0 is less than 3.5. What happens to your GPA? It goes down. Marginals drag the average. Okay. Let's see. The next thing we're going to talk about is short run versus long run. Okay. So this whole time we were talking about decisions or costs in the short run. How do we know we were in the short run? It's because we had fixed costs associated with decisions we could not change. In the short run, many decisions cannot be changed. For example, if we sign a 2-year lease, the next 2 years is considered short run for that lease issue. Okay, at least for our factory, it's at least the next 2 years is considered short run. We can't get out of the lease. We're stuck paying whatever, $1,000 a month on that lease. We need to keep paying that. We can't change that. And we need to make our decisions given we have this headache of $1,000 a month. Once the 2-year lease is up, we are now in quote unquote long run because we can change the terms of the lease. We can move, we can renegotiate, or we can just sign the same terms. Okay. In the short run, certain decisions cannot be changed, so certain costs are considered fixed. We have fixed costs. In the long run, there are no fixed costs. All costs are considered variable, so total cost is equal to total variable cost, or average total cost is equal to average variable cost. All right, let me clear this. And let's talk about the long run average total cost curve. Okay. The long run average total cost curve is a Q. Long run, let's just put average total cost. Average total cost. It's a big flat U. This is the long run average total cost curve. And within here, there are little u's. And this is like short run average total cost number one. And each of these hits the long run at one point. Short run average total cost 2. It's like right here. This one right here. Short run average total cost 3. Short run average total cost 4. And maybe short run average total cost 5. Okay. So these are 5 examples of short run average total cost curves that's within this long run average total cost curve. All right. For most of us, I think it would make sense if we're in this zone where I'm producing certain amount of, let's call this Camrys. Let's call this Toyota. Toyota makes Camrys. It's right now making whatever 100,000 Camrys per year. And it says, yeah, you know what? I want to make more Camrys. Builds another factory. It already has like 5. It's going to build a 6th one. It knows how to build factory. It knows Toyota's experience. It knows how to build factories. It's going to replicate one of its factories. And when it does that, and it can make, say, 150,000 Camrys, the average total cost stays the same. I know this is kind of crooked, but let's just say it's flat. Let's just say it's flat. And I think that's what we should expect. Toyota just replicates a factory right next door to one of its factory, and the per unit cost to make a Camry stays the same at, say, $20,000 per Camry. Okay, shouldn't go up. However, there's regions where when you increase quantities, the average total cost increases. There's regions where when you increase quantity, average total cost falls. And this region, to me, which should make sense, where average total cost stays the same when you increase quantity. Okay. So what I'm going to do is explain why this region may happen and this region may happen. And I'll give you the definition of all 3 regions. This region I will call A, B, and C. A is called the economies of scale or increasing returns to scale region. B is called constant returns to scale region. And C is called the diseconomies of scale or decreasing returns to scale region. Specifically, this area here, where when we increase quantity, our average total cost falls. That's called the increasing returns to scale or economies of scale region. This region B, where we increase quantity, we try to make more stuff, and average total cost stays the same. That's called the constant returns to scale region. And this region here, where we increase output and our average total cost increases, that's called the diseconomies of scale or decreasing returns to scale region. All right. So why would we see economies of scale? Let's go through that. There's two reasons that I found. Economies of scale or increasing returns of scale, that's could be due to factor specialization, or buying in bulk. As you are small, you're starting up. Mr. Toyota started out maybe in his, garage. And when he was small, he had to do everything himself. He had to sit there and deal with being the CEO, the CFO, the head researcher, the sweeper of the floor, the mechanic. When things break down, he had to fix everything himself. He's not very good at all these things, but he had to deal with it. The bookkeeper, everything he had to do himself. When he didn't know how to do something, he looked it up in YouTube. Probably took him 4 hours to do something. When an expert, like a really good mechanic or bookkeeper, would take him like half the time. As Toyota start increasing output, getting bigger and bigger, Toyota started hiring specialized workers and specialized equipment. And this dramatically reduces time and costs. Okay, so taking 5 hours to do things, it takes 1 hour or 1 minute. Okay, when you reduce time, reduces labor hours, reduces cost. Another reason why you might save money per unit, per cookie or per Camry, is buying in bulk. When you're small, working out of your garage, you need another bolt. You go to Home Depot. Mr. Toyota goes to Home Depot and buys small bulk items. Tools and screws and nails and whatnot, and sheets of metal at Home Depot. Pays a lot per pound. As he gets bigger, he buys it from Costco. Saves money because Costco sells it cheaper per pound. And then after a while, he goes directly to the steel manufacturer and buys steel from there. And it's even cheaper from them. Or buys screws from screw manufacturers, and it's cheaper. And all of this reduces cost. These are the two reasons why that I found why you increase your output, you could have lower average total cost. All right, what about the other side? This economies of scale. This economies of scale. How can that happen? Basically, it's called government. Yeah, I experienced this in the government. It's when you get too fat and bloated and you do everything slower. And that happens to companies, not just people. As a company gets too big, just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it gets too big. It's just harder to do stuff. When he was working out of his garage, he only has to satisfy himself. He's the CEO, CFO. He makes all the decisions. When you get massively big, there's 10,000, there's 100 VPs, all these directors, North American CEO, Japan CEO, Europe CEO. They all talk and they all have to sit here and try to hash out meetings and stuff. That just adds time and adds more bureaucracy. And this stuff can actually reduce efficiency and increase costs. All right, this is the end of this lecture. This is the lecture on chapter 13. And goodbye.